I don't know. We're still working out how to launch this thing. I love it. But here I am on a Monday morning. Hello, everybody. If anybody's watching, I have no idea if this is actually streaming out. I need to figure out how to transition to me. There I am. Okay, cool. Hello. So this is the first scheduled live stream. Oh no, I did that. I guess we did that last time. But this is the first of the planned live streams. Are going every Monday and Thursday morning. This day it's super rainy outside here in San Diego, and hopefully I can brighten your morning a bit if you're in a dark place, either meteorologically or emotionally. Here's hopefully a little brightness to your morning. The plan for the day. So over the weekend, I did the first book club. We launched a book club for The Velvet Rage, and it's an online book club. You can find the information about the book club via the website at slay-today.com. And we had a first meeting of guys and women who are reading the book. The Velvet Rage is about, basically it's from an author talking about the experience of growing up gay in America and how that affects gay men. It's very specific to the audience of gay men and the struggles they face, although some of the struggles may be also experienced by bisexuals or lesbians, but it's really, the author did decide to focus on that. So we had a book club to discuss our experience as gay people and how accurate that book is or not. And the plan this morning was we had some really great discussions over the weekend about that book and about the topics that are raised in that book. And the plan is to bring some of those really interesting conversations we had to the podcast in a live stream. However, I had a guest scheduled for that who had to reschedule at the last minute. So we're gonna hold those great discussions to a later podcast. Although I will talk a bit about the Velvet Rage in a bit. The plan for this morning is, of course, to bring you some inspirational music and one of my favorite songs that I've been listening to recently from India.Arie. And we're gonna talk about that for a little bit. We're gonna talk about the Velvet Rage, and then we're gonna go talk about one of the tools that we use in Smart Recovery that was used on me, or that I did. I went through as a person dealing with substance abuse in the Smart Recovery program, the hierarchy of values, it's called. We're going to walk through that and see how that can help motivate you to do some change in your life. And then we're going to close out with a little note about the Startup Weekend event coming up. I'm really super enthusiastic about entrepreneurship and startups and building a life for yourself, following your dreams using entrepreneurship. And so I want to talk about that event coming up later this month. So that's the plan for the show: motivational music, Velvet Rage, Startup Weekend, hierarchy of values, and then you go out and have an awesome day because that is what we're here for, to give you. Okay, so let's see. So I want to start off with, the song is called, it's by India.Arie. It's called Just Do You. And we're going to listen to a bit of it and then talk about why I love it so much. But it's a very positive song about taking control of your life and setting up your own rules. So let's hear that. No, that. So that's a bit of the song coming from the first verse up to the first chorus. And I cannot, if I'm ever in a bad mood, I can't listen to the song and not get out of that. You can see from the lyrics, let's just talk about like what she's talking about there, but the voice telling me that go back to the thing. Voice told me I'm essential, how my fears are limiting my potential. And I have to say, certainly my fears have been something that has limited me. I think it's true for everybody, really, but my fears have limited me in the stuff that I would do. And recently, the biggest fear I had for my life was that people would discover that I had used meth, and that was a regular part of my life. And uh, the fear of that and the shame relating to that would keep me from doing a lot of things that I want to do. And one of the things that's important for me is to be helpful to others. And so what I did last week, I think I mentioned this in a podcast with Megan Goodrich last time, but I had posted to my Facebook because I wanted to do this podcast. I posted to my Facebook to all my friends and family that I struggled with drugs and have been in therapy, and a lot of that struggle came out of my experience being a gay black man in America, and shame related to that, and shame that I was unaware of for a long time. And so that's a secret I'd kept for a long time, and the fear of that secret getting out had really limited things that I could do with my life. So hearing this song really helped me think about how my fears have been limiting me. And then the song goes on to talk about just really encouraging to go out there and live your best life. I love the upbeat nature of the song and the encouragement it gives you. And the rule is to just go be you, just go do everything you can do to raise the bar in your own life and help elevate other people and to go do that today. There's a second part of the song I really want to listen to because I really love coming out of this second verse of the song into the bridge and the words of advice she gives for that. So I'm going to play that now. Oops. So this is coming out of the second verse, second chorus. That I just listened to that over and over again, and that really ties together with my core belief in entrepreneurship and startups. Is that at least when you go work a normal job, then you're forced to obey the rules or whatever whatever your boss wants or whatever the job requires of you to do, and so much of your life is set by rules that other people are imposing on you. But if you have the ability to dream your own dream and think of a way that you can change the world for better or bring that dream to reality, then you can set your own rules for life. You can create the game, you set your own rules, and I think if you're really honest with yourself and truthful with yourself and true to your own identity, then regardless of whether you make a ton of money or don't, you do win at just realizing who you can be in the world. So I love that song. It is on my playlist of awesome songs that get me going. I will put that in the playlist that is available via Slay Today, slay-today.com. On the website, I'm keeping track of all the songs that all the guests and myself love in playlists that are available on Spotify, organized by month. So there's a March 2020 playlist, there's an April 2020 playlist, and doing the same thing on the YouTube channel. So you can see the music videos of all these songs as well. So check those both out. And as always, for everything that I talk about in the podcast or on the live stream, the links to everything will be in the show notes that are available on the website. So as I mentioned, over the weekend we had our first book club meeting for the book The Velvet Rage, and this is you can see the cover of the book there. And The Velvet Rage really talks about, as I mentioned, the experience of growing up gay in America. And while there are certainly critiques of the book, I think it does a pretty accurate job of describing some of the challenges that gay men face. And it breaks up that experience of growing up in America into three stages of evolution of the gay man, and you may not reach all three stages of evolution, but hopefully you do. But for the author, these are all unavoidable. And the first stage is characterized by shame. The shame is the fear of being unlovable for some trait that you have. And in this case, the trait, the immutable trait is your same-sex attraction. And because of the messages you see in society about that not being acceptable, that there's a fear of being unlovable, and either by, from your own family, from your parents, from siblings. For me, I think that certainly was a fear, although I was fortunate not to live in a household that was outwardly antagonistic or threatening to gay life. It was never discussed really. But certainly I was in church a ton. And I think at my peak in high school, I was in church like 5 days a week between handbell choir and regular choir, and obviously the church service, and then Wednesday night Bible study, and then like the church musical practice. I was always there, and the church that I was at was definitely not accepting of that, and of homosexuality. And so I got the message very clearly that this is something that is very shameful and will send you to hell. And so that put into me the fear of certainly being unlovable and of hell. And I think that whether that shame comes from that context, from the religious context, or from the family home context, or from friends and the homophobic comments that you hear in school, that shame is very real. What we did in the book was talk about our experiences in the book club, is talk about those experiences and process them, I think, as a group. And that was super useful, especially hearing from different perspectives of different people's different experience. One thing I didn't expect in our conversations in the book club was the intersectionality between race and sexual identity. That came up in a lot of the conversations, and I've never been in a book club. I've much less never run one before. So I had prepared all these questions, and none of them had anything to do with race and sexual orientation, intersectionality. But the contrast there was super interesting. And what I mean by that is certainly for some folks, understanding your own identity, who am I, takes different flavors. Certainly for me, my background is that my mother is white and my father is black. And so I would often get growing up, and it's still a question I get these days, but it's phrased much differently. But when I was growing up, the question was, well, what are you? Somebody would walk up to me and just say, what are you? I'm a boy. What is it? I don't understand the question. And what they meant was, what they're seeing is, you look black, but you're not. There's something different about you. Is it Indian? What are you? They're trying to put my race in some kind of context they can understand. And once I understood what the question was, which I didn't understand at first, then I was able to begin to process an answer. I hated that question, but it did raise a lot of questions in me because my parents were divorced when I was 3, and so I grew up with my white mother, and so I identified as white because my whole family's white. The immediate family that I would see at every Christmas or every family gathering was all white. That I saw myself as white too, and it wasn't until later, I think really sometime in junior high perhaps, that I had this revelation of, I'm not white. What am I? And because I hadn't been around the black community that much, I didn't feel that much identification there either. And so the question of who I am was really hard to answer. And then I think the same thing happens on the sexual orientation front in terms of forming your identity. If you understand that you're not attracted to the opposite sex, then what am I? Certainly, I did not understand what being gay meant growing up. There's no book you get that helps you understand that. And I because my only contact with the gay community growing up was what you would see once a year when the news would cover the Pride Parade, and I understood gay to be somebody who stood on a float in either a thong or drag, in fabulous makeup and huge brightly colored flags, and was completely outrageous. And that was my understanding of what gay was. And so if I understood that I wasn't necessarily straight, but I didn't have a desire necessarily to throw on heels and a wig, then I did not understand my own identity, and that also caused a lot of problems. And so the intersectionality there I was talking about was between not understanding my own racial identity and also not understanding my own sexual orientation identity. Those are all so confusing things. Anyway, though, and that came up from multiple people in the conversation too, that growing up, if your identity maps with that of your family, either racially or sexual orientation wise, then the path is pretty easy, and you've got a model to follow for how you're supposed to behave and who you're supposed to be. But if it doesn't, then that identity can be very hard to form, and then then there could be some shame in not be fulfilling the models that you think you're supposed to fulfill. So that's a sample of the conversation, of the deep conversations we had in the book club. And if you have an interest, I totally recommend this book. I'm not even on the right page. That was a Velvet Rage. So anyway, that if you have an interest in this book, is a really good book. We're going to go through the book club for the next 3 weeks. Information about how to participate in that is on the Zoom meeting for that is on the website, and I haven't updated for the date for next Saturday, but it'll be the next meeting is next Saturday at 1 p.m. Pacific. So join us. Get the book either via Amazon or via an audiobook, Audible, and that's how I do all my book reading right now is via Audible streams, Audible listen, because for some reason that just works better for me as I walk around trying to get some exercise these days. So join us for the book club. Get some really interesting conversations, and even if you don't pick up the book, it's a really great read. And later, in a future podcast when I can reschedule the guests, we'll have some really interesting online discussions about the nature of the issues that are brought up in that book. So, one thing I wanted to do today is talk about motivation for change in terms of if you're struggling with alcohol or substance abuse or any other behavior. Could be an eating behavior that you're not happy with, or there's all kinds of things that we call them in smart recovery called maladaptive behaviors, in terms of I am doing this behavior to cope with some other issues that I'm dealing with. And for smart recovery, there's 4 steps to the process, and one of the first steps, and the first step is building and maintaining motivation to make the changes that you need to make in life. And a tool for doing that is called a hierarchy of values, where we list out the values that you have in your own life. So listing out what are the things that you value in your life. And I thought it would be useful to do that, to share some of the values that I have in my life as an example. So for me, my hierarchy of values here, I certainly, and this isn't all the things I value in life, but in prepping for the show, I wanted to I had limited time to do the deep dive I really wanted to do with this and update it since all this COVID stuff has happened. But certainly my physical health, I think that's something that everybody can understand at this point. It is a value that I have, and trying to maintain that. And I'm trying to eat better and try and exercise, and both of those are super challenging while we're in self-isolation right now. And I find especially the physical exercise, which I'm usually very good at, has been something that's been more challenging for me to do on a daily basis. So my physical health is something I value. Relationships and with friends and family is something that I value, and something that certainly I can see that time that I spent using drugs definitely impacted both those. Mostly on the friend side, I think there are people that I would be friends with in a better way had drug use not gotten in the way of that, and that's disappointing for some years that are lost to that. But I value listing out my hierarchy of values: relationships with friends and family, Helping others have a positive impact on the world is something that I value. That's something that gives me drive in the morning, that I feel good about, that I really want to do. And one of the reasons for doing this is helping others, and this is certainly an expression of my values. And then having fun, and really trying to enjoy life and the short number of years that we have on the planet. So those are things that I value, and the whole point of this is taking time to do a deep thought about what you value in life, to help bring about that motivation to change your life and to work on cessation of those behaviors that are problematic. And then you realize, as you go through those values, perhaps, and this is what I realized, that there's one thing that didn't make the list of values, and that was doing drugs. That wasn't a value of mine. And that seems totally obvious, except when I think about all the time spent in that activity, and time lost either in doing that activity, or in doing drugs, or in the recovery from that, in the crash and rehabilitating your body and trying to just get back to a normal state of working and being, and so that didn't make the list. And then you look back on the things that you spend time on and realize, well, if these are the things that I value, am I really spending my time on these things, or am I spending it somewhere else? And for me, I was spending too much time somewhere else. And so that helps. That really helps to take an inventory of your values, and begin to use that as a motivational tool to change your life. So the next step in that process then is to think about, and that's in the Smart Recovery Workbook, is to think about 3 questions that you have. And first question is, what do I want for my future? What do I want? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? For me, I certainly want a future that is where I am true to myself and true to the things that I enjoy doing. And for me, that's bringing some positive energy in the world. But for everybody, that's you have to decide that yourself. But it is worth taking the time to sit down and think about those and write that out. What am I currently achieving to do that? I wonder if I made a typo in that. I'm going to check real quick. Did I get that right? No, I totally didn't write that right. What am I currently doing to achieve that is the way that should be stated. So what am I currently doing to achieve whatever the answer is to number 1? For me, in this time of isolation, I am learning how to do this whole live streaming, podcast, audio processing, video editing thing, and also learning how to hopefully make some kind of connection with people out there in the world. So I feel good about that now. I'd say if you'd asked me a month ago, what I want for my future would have been very fuzzy. And what am I currently doing to achieve that? So for the past 7 years, I've been an iOS programmer, making iPhone apps, as a employee at a digital agency, and then as a freelance contractor. And while I find some value in doing that, in terms of I find the process to be very creative, and I love iPhone and iPad and Apple products, and being able to be a programmer to make those products do whatever I want them to do is super cool. But that I don't think that was totally in line with my values in terms of what I really want to do is have a positive impact helping others, and I wasn't quite there with that. So that's a good question to help make an inventory of your life. And then finally, the question is, how do I feel about what I'm currently doing? A month ago, I would have felt, if you ask me honestly, do I love what I do every day, and do I feel great about this? This will be how I spent my life. The answer would not have been yes. these days, this whole challenge of trying to figure out, what this world is about, and trying to bring some of this great content to folks to help them change their lives, yes, I feel great about it. But take a time to sit down with those 3 questions against that hierarchy of values and think about who you are, what you value, what you're currently doing, and what you want to do, and if you're working on your way there. Because that can really help build that motivation for you. All that's taken, as you see in the lower right-hand corner from the Smart Recovery Handbook. I will link to that as well in the show notes on slay-today.com. I'll be working on those show notes today, so they'll definitely be up by tomorrow. Stay tuned. You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Slay Today Pod, all one word, Slay Today Pod. And as soon as I make the show notes available, I will post that out via Twitter and Instagram. So that's the main educational content for today, was going through that tool via Smart Recovery, and hopefully leading you down a path of being able to set up a situation where you can develop your motivation for making changes you want to make in your life. Certainly tune into Smart Recovery for more of that. One thing I did want to highlight before we go, though, and I mentioned this a little bit in the quick update video I did the other day, was an event coming up later this month on the 24th, which is the Startup Weekend. And in case you missed the other video, Startup Weekend is an organization that I've been volunteering with for the past over 10 years now. And what it is, as mentioned, it happens over the course of the weekend, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And what we do at these events, and usually they're in-person events, of course, now we're doing everything online like everybody else is, but at a normal Startup Weekend, we get a group of people who have ideas for startups they'd like to launch, new businesses that they'd like to create, and we help them pitch an idea on Friday night, form a team, and that team works for the course of the weekend and hopefully launches that new business and startup on Sunday evening. They do a presentation to a panel of judges who are experienced investors or experienced entrepreneurs, and give them feedback about how they can be successful with that new business. So it's a great way to take ideas that you can have some excitement about and make them into reality. So there's about 800 to 1,000 Startup Weekend events that happen around the world every year. I've been helped organize or facilitate 40 or 50 of them. And I love it. They're absolutely wonderful. There's just such positive energy. There is an LGBT focused Startup Weekend happening that's on schedule for this September. It's called Hackout. The website for that is swhackout.org. But coming up this month is there's going to be a virtual online Startup Weekend for folks. And the whole plan is this: there are people who are thinking COVID-19 has obviously created all kinds of problems for the world. And the whole plan of the online Startup Weekend is to provide a forum where people can pitch ideas, form teams, and help build startups that bring some solutions to all the problems that are created by COVID-19. It'll be the first time that I'm aware of doing a totally virtual Startup Weekend remotely. That there's going to be events in countries around the world, and I volunteered to help with some of that. But definitely, if you have any interest in Startup Weekend, or you've got some ideas for something you can do to help the world in the time of COVID-19, tune into that, and I gave you the website link there. So this is a bit a short program today. It's only 30 minutes, but I had, like I said, I had to reschedule around some last minute changes. I hope this was useful to you. And there's stuff happening on my computer right now. I hope that this was all useful to you. And I'll leave you. The next live stream is planned for Thursday at 10 a.m. And I'm super excited about Thursday's show because I have Dr. Horvath, who authored a book, who leads the Smart Recovery. He used to be on the National Board for Smart Recovery, has a book out called, I got to get this right. It's Gambling, Sex, Drugs, Gambling, and Chocolate, and a guide to overcoming addictions. great book. We're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about his work as a therapist in this space. So tune into that on Thursday's show. As I mentioned, all the links for music and workbook that I talked about and the Startup Weekend and everything, all those links for that will be on the website for the podcast and the stream, which is slay-today.com. You can find episodes of this podcast on Spotify, and also check out the YouTube channel, the Slay Today YouTube channel, for all the music, and you can rewatch the previous live streams on this one as well. Anyway, until then, I hope to see you on Thursday. And I'll leave you out with some Indie Irie again.